Hello everyone, in today's video I will run through some of the basic configuration for vCenter server and ESXi host. In my previous video I have installed vCenter server, and just a recap of the components that were installed as part of that installation. So embedded platform services controller was installed. It includes the following components: single sign-on, license server, VMware certificate authority. And with the vCenter server, these are the components that gets installed automatically, which includes the inventory services, the Postgres database, the web client, the ESXi dump collector, syslog collector, the syslog service, as well as the auto deploy. Now let's see the additional components that are available to install. So go to the vCenter installer media for Windows and run the autorun.exe. The additional components available to install include the vSphere desktop client, the update manager, and the vSphere authentication proxy. So let's install the vSphere desktop client and follow the wizard to complete the installation. So I'm just going to follow the wizard and select the language. Okay. Accepting the end user license agreement and selecting the default location for the install. So click install to begin the installation. So I'm going to pause here and come back once the installation completes. So the installation completed successfully. Let's launch the vSphere client by double clicking the shortcut on the desktop and log into the vCenter server. So the IP address or the name for the vCenter server. So I'm logging in as administrator for the SSO domain. So I've successfully logged into the vCenter server. Let's go to the hosts and cluster and expand the cluster. So both of the ESXi hosts I can see over here. Next, I'll show you how to apply licenses for vCenter server and ESXi host. It can be done through the vSphere desktop client as well as the web client. So going to the C# client, if you go to home, under administration, go to licensing, and this is where you can add your licenses and apply to the products. But I would highly encourage to use the web client because VMware is deprecating the C# client. So let's add licenses through the web client. So under administration, go to licensing, click this plus sign to add new licenses. At this time, no license key is available. So let's click plus here. So add the license keys, one per line. Click next. All right, so you can add a name to the license keys, and this is where it recognizes to which product the key is applicable to. So I'm just going to click next here and finish. So 2 license keys are added. Now let's apply these to the products. So go to assets. So as you can see here, the vCenter server right now has a evaluation key is in evaluation mode. So select and assign license. So from here, I'll pick the license key which is applicable to the vCenter and click OK. Now go to the hosts. Similarly apply the same keys to the host. So I can select both the hosts and assign the license. All right, so that's it. This is how we have assigned the licenses to the vCenter server and ESXi host. So going back to the licenses tab, you can see the licenses that are in use. So next I'm going to configure the NTP and DNS settings on my ESXi hosts. So both the NTP and DNS are extremely important for the virtual infrastructure. So let's go to the host and cluster, select one of the ESXi hosts, go to manage. So under system, go to time configuration. As you can see, the NTP client is disabled and the service status is stopped. So click on edit. Here you can also manually configure the time for the ESXi host, but for production environments, the best practice is to configure the network time protocol. So select this option and make sure to select the NTP service startup policy as start and stop with the host. And this is where you can add the NTP servers. So basically for this one, I need to have internet on my host and I do not have internet, so I'm not going to click OK here. I'm just going to cancel out, but this is how you would actually configure NTP on a ESXi host. So same is going to be true for the second host. If I go into the second host and I can click edit here, I can select to use NTP protocol and select start and stop with the host and add the NTP servers here. So for DNS, let's configure one of the hosts using the desktop client, and the second host I'll configure using the web client, and the same can be done through the command line as well. So select one of the ESXi hosts, go to configuration, and then under software, go to DNS and routing. Click on properties. So here you can also change the host name. So the domain is vlab.net. And here the DNS server. So for routing, you can specify the gateway here. All right, so that's it for the DNS and the routing. And again, this can be done from the DC UIs, the Direct Console user interface. So now let's go to the web client for the second host and configure the DNS using the web client. So select the second host, go to networking, go to TCP IP configuration, and here is a DNS. So click on this edit icon here. Go to the DNS configuration. The domain is vlab.net. DNS. And the search domain. And so go to the routing. So this is where you can configure the gateway. The gateway is correct over here, so I'm not going to change anything. Let's refresh once. All right, so all these settings are here. Let's go to host 1, and so again for that we configured it using the C# client, but you can see the changes here. All right, so this is for DNS. So the NTP and the DNS is configured for both the host. Next, I'm going to enable the SSH and the shell access for the hosts using the web client. So go to hosts and clusters and select one of the hosts, and then go to manage, and then settings, and under system go to the security profile, and after firewall go to the services section. So this is where the SSH and the ESXi shell can be enabled. As you can see, both of these services are not running at this time. From a security standpoint, it is recommended to have both of these disabled, and by default they are disabled. But for this exercise, I'm going to enable them. And in a later video, I will be talking more in detail regarding the security settings for the virtual environment. And also one thing to mention again, these can be enabled or disabled from the web client, from the vSphere client, using through the DC UI or through the command line. So let's click edit over here. So this is where both these services can be enabled. So SSH is basically a Unix-based command line interface and protocol for securely getting access to a remote computer. So once I enable SSH here on my ESXi host, I'll have remote command line access to the host using a SSH client such as PuTTY. So let's enable that. And what you also can select here is startup policy for this service. There are 3 options available. I think the security best practices to follow is to use the start and stop manually versus the start and stop with host, because once you take this policy, it would be up and running. SSH would be running all the time. So I usually go for start and stop manually. Usually you want to enable SSH and most likely for a troubleshooting purpose, and then come back and disable SSH here. So let's enable SSH. So it is running now, the daemon is running, and let's go and enable the shell. So again, the shell daemon is running as well. So let's click OK over here. Let's go back and see both these services are running. Yes. So now let's go to PuTTY and see if we can connect to the ESXi host. All right, so we are connected to the ESXi host, and you can run the commands over here. So let me now go to the DC UI. So if you are connected through SSH and you type DC UI, it actually takes you to the direct user console interface. And let me just quickly show you here where to enable or disable both of these in this DC UI. So press F2 and enter the password. Go to the troubleshooting options. So this is where you can see it says disable ESXi shell, disable SSH, because they are enabled at this time. So if I press enter over here, it basically would disable the shell. So let's enable it again. All right, and then press escape to exit, and one more time escape. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.